Hello and welcome to another special episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. Over the next few days, we are going to be doing a deep dive into some of the most powerful moments over the last 50 episodes. We hit our 100th episode milestone, and so all of these episodes come from episode 50 through to episode 100, covering a range of topics from owning who you are, the power of hospitality, physical fitness, restoration, and the power of taking the initiative. And so as we unpack that over the next few days, I'd encourage you to go back, listen to the original episode so that you can get the most out of this week's episode. So for today, we're taking a look at episode 90, titled Owning Who You Are. It's based on 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 6. It says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you." My guest for this episode was Gig in episode 90. Right now, though, I'm going to replay a little snippet from that conversation, and then we'll dive into a deeper chat, just you and I. And I think that's one of the things I kind of thought to myself. I'm like, oh yeah, the older I get, and for some people it is, but I do think it's a conscious decision. But I always thought I'll grow out of it. The older I get, the less competition there is. But I have heard some grandmas talking to each other about their grandkiddies at brunch tables, and I'm like, oh, the competition is fierce.
Fierce, absolutely. I don't think you ever grow out of it. I think our insecurities and life always creep in, and that's why we have to be still.
Yeah, and definitely. I think we have to deal with them, otherwise they do grow. They stay with you as you get older, and you can't really wish for it away.
Yes.
Being content, yeah, that's a tough one. So in the deep dive episode today, we are focusing on this idea that some insecurities have been stuck onto us for a very long time. I wanted to share with you an insecurity that I've had personally, in the hopes that maybe it will inspire you to maybe face yours. So I know that you can hear me speaking right now. I've got a little bit of a Kiwi meets Australian hybrid accent, but I actually have a deep insecurity with speaking English. I know it's a little, it's probably not what you expected me to say, but right up until I was about 7 years old, I spoke a different language at home. I heard my parents speak a different language at home. So there have been times in my life where I have said a word wrong because I never heard it spoken around the house. So I had this particular moment that I don't think I'll ever forget for as long as I'm alive. But I used to read a lot as a child. But the thing about reading as a child much above your reading age is that you kind of make up how words sound to you. On top of that, a lot of words you kind of hear in most Australian or New Zealand households, that vocabulary wasn't necessarily present in my household. Now, this came to the front when I was 16 years old, and I don't think I'll ever forget this moment. I remember coming into school and having this delicious bread roll thing, and one of my friends said, "Oh, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's a feta and spinach roll." And she laughed, and the others around her laughed. She goes, "Did you say feta? What? Is it made out of feet or something?" And she had a right old laugh about it, and I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. To her credit, the next day she came back and she apologized, and she said, "Joy, that was really unkind of me, and I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have assumed that everyone knows how to pronounce certain words." And that meant a lot. To her credit, I really valued her saying that. But it didn't take away those 24 hours of me just cursing myself and hating the fact that there are some words, and I don't know which ones until I say them, that I'll get wrong. Now, I had never heard the word feta used before. I had read it, I had seen it, and it's spelt F-E-T-A. Okay, it's not a double T, so it must be feta. And this has honestly been something that I have really struggled with and probably will continue to struggle with. And it's been an insecurity that I've carried right up until doing this podcast. There are still times where I say to myself, am I saying that right? And I try to change the word, or I swap it out for something I feel more comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, when I get to points where I feel very stressed or very tired or highly emotional, the language in my head changes. And I have to process sometimes 2 different languages, and sometimes the mix comes out, or I feel like saying this word, but I need to quickly translate it into English. And it doesn't happen very often because I moved to New Zealand when I was about 1. And so I definitely English is my main language. But the voices I heard in my childhood, they weren't speaking English. And so I think my thoughts are definitely bilingual. And like I said, especially when I feel tired, my goodness, I just can't get the words out. And I also feel, again, quite conscious of how I pronounce certain things. I've had people call things out, or just in jest, laugh at the way I pronounce something. And I've gotten pretty good at just kind of waving it off. It's not the best, actually, when you think about what I do for a living. You'd think that, English would be the one thing I would feel very confident in. But no, this is something that I really have struggled with and continue to struggle with. When I was younger, when I had a much thicker Indian accent, I didn't really speak much in school because I was afraid of getting bullied for that. And I've talked about all of that in previous episodes. Or maybe I haven't. Maybe I should talk about that a little bit more. I don't have really great examples of kind children and classmates from my early years in primary school. Anyway, it really fed into my self-confidence and being able to do public speaking. And I had to deal with this when I realized that if I wanted to pursue my calling as a communicator, because I love doing it. I mean, there was definitely the fear, but man, I love what I do. I have to deal with this insecurity of mine. And one of the things that I've had to do is say to myself, Joy, this is a space where you can allow God into. This is an area where God can really teach you to be content with who you are. I mean, 1 Peter 5, chapter 6, 7 says, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And so I think for me, the key word really is humility, is by acknowledging I am really insecure about this and it comes and goes and I need to invite God into it. And I can't really assume that I'm never going to, mess up my words, because I will, because I'm human. And, as a result of my childhood, this probably will be something that I'll forever have to battle with. And I'd rather battle it with God. I'd rather have him guide me and use it to both draw me closer to him, but in some way, shape or form, use perhaps this deep insecurity of mine to serve, reach, and influence others. The number of times I have Googled how to pronounce something, the number of times I have looked up on YouTube artist names or interviews and trying to find ways people say certain things would probably blow your mind. But you know what? That's given me a really great skill. It's taught me how to be accurate. It's taught me to be precise. It's taught me to watch out for the details. And you know what? If I didn't have that insecurity, I wouldn't also have this strength. And that's what I really want to focus on with today's episode. We all have our insecurities. We all have those insecurities that have sort of followed us from childhood, maybe from trauma, maybe from something that you've experienced or seen. And I don't know about you, but I would rather that insecurity bring out a strength in me than bring out more weakness. And I know that the only way it can bring out a strength in me is if I humble myself, acknowledge that this is an area that I'm weak in, and invite God into it. Today, my question to you is this: what is an age-old insecurity that you could be giving over to God and trading for a strength? Because that's what this verse promises us. If we humble ourselves under God's mighty hand, He will lift us up in due time. So God will be faithful, but we've got to humble ourselves first and acknowledge that this is an area that we struggle with. Before we wrap up today's conversation, hey, I would love to remind you that you have an opportunity to really impact someone's life by providing them sight-saving surgery. This surgery takes only 12 minutes. It costs $33, but for that person in that developing country who can't otherwise afford this, my goodness, you would be a true godsend. And if you would like to do that, the link is in the description below, miraclesday.com. And that wraps up today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm really looking forward to deep diving into another previous episode. And if you want to just do your homework early and sort of set yourself up well for really absorbing tomorrow's conversation, go back and listen to episode 72. That's the one. It's titled, Does Fitness Matter to God? Yup. And this is the one where I'm going to be talking about my weight loss journey and how that ties in with my relationship with God and my faith and all of that. So it's just going to be a good old chat tomorrow. I'm not an expert, but I've had a lot of people email through wanting to know more about this part of my life. If you haven't already, make sure you do leave a written 5-star review. This really matters. Also, if you haven't already and you love this podcast, go ahead and be part of the Facebook group. It's just an exclusive little group filled with amazing individuals who love listening into the podcast and just want to get more out of every episode. So if you enjoyed today's episode, I'm sure you'll enjoy the follow-up post that's over up on that Facebook page. That link, as well as the Everyday Joy email address that comes straight to me, is right below in the description. Look forward to catching up again tomorrow.